My interest in politics came from where I came from, you know. So it's very personal to me because of politics. My father left Sudan, and a lot more people did. And you know, this whole displacement thing in the world mostly relates to the political situation. So as a child, you know, politics was the reason that I didn't have a home, and I always questioned it. And because we lived in a region where you can't really talk about politics, you know, because of your safety and so on. And as kids, you know, you're not supposed to talk about politics. We're here because we don't want to do that. We want, you know, because if you talk about politics, then your whole schooling is going to get disturbed, and you know, it's going to be harder for you. So when my father used to buy these political cartoon magazines, Egyptian, one is called Sabah al-Khair, the other one is called Rose al-Yusuf. And that just opened doors for me because I've seen, you know, the different styles. I've seen how they talk about issues that we're not supposed to talk about in a very relatable way. And at the same time, I mean, you could see people, and when they buy a newspaper, the first page is always the same. You know, the great leader did this and that, and everything is great, and everybody's happy. So nobody took it seriously at all. And they took cartoons seriously, you know, which you're not supposed to take seriously, which was the last page. So everybody just buys the newspaper, just turns to the last page and looks at the cartoon. So I remembered that, and that really affected me, that, you know, this is a good way to get to people. And I always liked comics and, you know, superheroes. And so it was a good way to relate art to politics and for me to ask questions and try to understand what was the problem. In my cartoons, I really try to talk about issues that relate us more than separate us. You know, I try to say that, you know, even though I'm in, you know, the MENA region, or I'm in Africa, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm black, or whatever, but I still can relate to issues of a Chinese artist, for example, who's also talking about, you know, censorship and talking about how to get through to that, and talking about the problems of you know, religion, and talking about terrorism and what's not, and where does this come from, and history. So it's you know, we live in a village now, and we're all related somehow, some way, you know. And social media, of course, made that a lot easier. So because I live on social media, I'm basically on social media. I never worked for any newspaper before because I couldn't, because of censorship. So social media opened a door for me to be global more than to be just within my borders. So this is what I try to do most of the time. Just, you know, remind people that at the end of the day, these borders are made up. Whatever these borders are, you know, if it's a country's border, or if it's yourself, or whatever, you know, you live in a world with millions, billions of other people. And there are connections, and it just depends how you want to build them, and if you want to understand them or not. If you choose not to see them, then that's something else. I'm from the generation of the internet. You know, I remember when we had the dial-up connection, and we had to, you know, understand how this works, and websites, and I grew up with that. From forums to like chat rooms to blogs to social media. So I grew up with that. I feel when, you know, sometimes when people ask me, where do you feel like you're from? I tell them I feel like I'm from the internet, you know, because this is where I grew up. So the internet gave me a chance to discover a lot of things and see a lot of things. You know, I saw art, I saw comics, I saw politics, I heard other news. Instead of that newspaper that we always buy, there's other news out there. So that, you know, it was amazing to me. Like, the internet was such a savior for our generation and our region. One day, this editor threw my papers in my face and actually kicked me out of his office. He was like, "You're not funny, and your stuff sucks. So just, you know, stop trying to be a cartoonist because you're not." And I thought about it. I was like, why am I trying to reach only those people that read this exact magazine or newspaper? Because at the end of the day, it's all about alliances now. So this newspaper, if you work for this newspaper, you work for this channel, that means you support so-and-so. And if you work for this channel, that means this person is paying you, that means your alliance is this person. So what I try to do is try to establish my independence as an artist and as a political artist and as a political voice, the internet was the best place for that. And it wasn't only me doing this, it was a whole wave of artists and creatives and writers just going to the internet because that's the only solution we had. And that started that wave of the Arab Spring. The first thing where everything started was the internet. You know, this is the only place that we could actually connect. And this gave me a huge chance to work with a lot of activists and people who were actually on the ground, even though I wasn't, but my work was. There's always things that I want to draw, but I feel like I shouldn't or I can't. And the reasons vary, but like for the first thing is, of course, you know, people call it self-censorship. I call it choosing, really, you know, because you need to talk to a certain crowd. You need to understand how to talk to that certain crowd. What's the best way to deliver that message? It doesn't always have to be in your face. This is what I think. I don't care what you think. This is it. No, I'm trying to reach out to people. I'm not trying to just tell them that I'm right and you're wrong. No, I'm trying to ask a question. So I think self-censorship, it depends on the way you look at things, you know, and how you want to reach. And, you know, at the end of the day, we come from, you know, a conservative, not conservative, but yeah, like a conservative society. And, you know, my mom is on Facebook, right? So what I'm trying to do is trying to relate even, you know, my mother, a 10-year-old nephew, and a professor in university, a rebel, an activist. So I'm trying to talk to everybody in one small thing and without using language, because I think language is one of these barriers that we have. So I try as much as I can to use only visuals, right? Because at the end of the day, image is an international language. And a lot of times, censorship gives you more creativity to talk about things because you try to work around everything. But satire really opens doors, you know, when you meet somebody with a smile, they'll greet you back with a smile. So it's trying to make satire more than, you know, not really offensive, but shocking in a good way that that I make you think. An image can be disturbing, but it will make you think. It doesn't have to be funny, but it will make you think, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm trying to get your attention. So it's all about that.